Merry Christmas. Oh, sorry, the pen is not. Yeah, okay. 好，谢谢道格斯，然后1年来的付出哈，那就是对大家都我知道大家都由衷感谢，那也希望我们可以回到2堂，那我再尽量争取，好不好？好，对，谢谢。
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to come here and teach and look at the newspaper with all of you every week. So I look forward to doing that more. And like he said, maybe I can ask Donald Trump if he can provide more funding for this class. Yeah, I'll have to send him a letter, email. Well, you know, they have funding, right? So they, you know, the government, U.S. government provides funding for everything. So basically, yeah, so they do have something to do with this. Yeah. How do we copy this? Miller, do you know? Sorry, I'm a little bit. What do I do? Oh, sorry. Oh, there. Oh, print as text. That's it. Oh, yeah, there we are. Okay. Whole article, yeah. Yeah, sorry I was late today. I can blame the Taichung city government. They're doing some sort of construction work on the road here, so it's completely blocked off. And normally I normally drive my motorcycle, which would make it easier, but I was in my car, so I had to go around the block to find the egg. I didn't know there was another entrance over here, but anyhow, I found it, so yeah. Okay. 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 Okay, the title of this article is, I'll just show it to you. It says, Americanisms Invade King's English, okay? Now, I'll blow this up. We'll look at it more closely. But, yeah. So basically, I thought this was a very funny article because it's talking about the English language, of course, and we're here to study English. And so I saw this article in USA Today, which is a very popular newspaper. In fact, USA Today is the only, I think currently it's the only national American newspaper. You know, there's many newspapers, of course, in America, but they are all from different cities and different regions. Even the New York Times is a New York newspaper, of course. But USA Today is published nationally, so you can buy it anywhere in America, which is unusual. So anyhow, I saw this article and I thought, okay, this is an article we need to look at, because sometimes when we're looking at English language, there may be differences between American spellings and British spellings, right? The way we spell words in American, I should say American English, and the way we spell words in British English. I'll give you an example. I know that, for example, sometimes you see the word center, right? But in British English, they spell it center with an R-E, right? Or I remember when the Taichung Shizhengfu was designing the Yuanman Juchang, they spelled it this way, and I corrected them. I said, no, you should spell it this way. Either way is okay, but I felt like it should be consistent, right? If you're going to use one style for most of your spelling, then you should use the same style for all of your spelling. And so I told the city government, you know, I don't care, you know, I think either way is fine, but you need to be consistent, okay? Does everybody know what consistent means? It means you stay the same, right? So if you do it this way, most of the time, you should do it all of the time, right? That's what I mean. You know, for example, if someone is very consistent, let's say you could tell your friends, you say, I get up consistently every morning at 7 a.m., okay? That means I do it every single time. There's no variation. I always do it. So someone can be consistent, or if you want to turn it into a food, so you can say consistently, okay? Why don't we say it together, consistent, consistent, consistently, Consistently. Yeah, and so this is a good word. If someone's very consistent, it means it's often a positive meaning. It means I do the same thing every time. Or if someone is very reliable, 很可靠, right? You say they are very consistent. They don't change. They don't vary. Yeah. So this is a common word. Yeah. What? Yeah. They listen to me. Yeah. I'm the 市政府英文顾问, but seriously, I am really. And so, although I have to say they don't give me everything, but often when they have things, they will send it to me and they'll let me check it. I think they probably have other, consultants, English consultants. But when they were doing the Taichung MRT system, the Green Line, they actually, the 副市长, I think it was Linghu 副市长, he took me to the Fengle Gongyuan station. It was not open yet. And we went through everything, looked at all the signs, and I said, well, that sign's not correct, or this sign needs to change, and so, yeah, it was kind of fun. But anyhow, yeah, so I do a little bit of that with them. Okay, so, yeah, so you can see here it's center, it's the same word, but it's just spelled differently. You know what amphitheater, right? Over there in the Wenxing Forest Park, Wenxing Senling Gongyan, we have a big amphitheater. Why don't we say it together? Amphitheater. Amphitheater. Now, this word is usually pronounced with a P, amphitheater. We don't say amphitheater, but amphitheater. Okay, so let's say it again, amphitheater. Amphitheater. And of course, theater, you know what a theater is, right? If you go to a movie theater, there's, theaters for other kinds of theaters. So anyhow, this is one thing, but there's another thing that's interesting, though, because it's not just the way we spell words. It's also the British use different words for certain items or things that we don't use in America. And it's funny because the Canadians are somewhere in between. Sometimes the Canadians use certain words that are more British because, of course, Canada was part of the British. Actually, it's still a British Commonwealth country. But they use some words, of course, they're very heavily influenced by the United States, but they also have some British influences. So I feel like Canada is somewhere in between. So anyhow, I thought this was a funny article, and it says here, just because it says here, Americanisms invade the King's English. Americanism would be just a funny way of saying an American expression or American way of using English language or an American way of speaking. So if someone uses an American expression, we might say, oh, that is an Americanism. Okay, it's a 名词, right? So you can say he uses lots of Americanisms in his language. So why don't we say it together, Americanism. Americanism. Okay, so it says Americanisms invade the King's English. Now, the King's English, does everybody know what that means? Yeah. Now, a few years ago, we called it the Queen's English, right? Okay, but now we call it the King's English. So if we say that someone speaks King's English, it means it's very proper, like 很标准, like in Chinese, we often talk about Beijing Hua, right? Beijing, Hua is very the proper Mandarin Chinese. But here for English, we say the King's English. And so it means the proper British way of speaking. And so sometimes if you go to England, of course, if you go to England, there's many different regions and there's many different accents. But if you hear someone who speaks very proper English, we can say, oh, he speaks he speaks proper King's English. Like somebody who went to a very high-level university, like Oxford, university. Often when you listen to them speak, their accent and their way of speaking is very high-end. I have to say, I told you I have a 足球队, like I'm a soccer or a football coach, and my team often has many British players from 英国. And it's funny because I've talked to some of my British players, and sometimes when they meet other British players that have joined the team, they'll mention their accent. They'll say, oh, that guy has he has very proper English, you know. Or they'll say, oh, that guy's English, I can tell what part of England he's from, like Northern England or Southern England or what part of England. So they all have it's interesting. But it's funny here because it says Americanisms invade, right? You know what invade means, right? Like we talk about people are worried about China invading Taiwan. But here we talk about Americanisms invading the King's English. So I think that's kind of this is kind of a humorous headline. So it says here for the Brits, sorry, you can't see this, but it says, how kids talk in school is a bloody shame. Okay, so this is kind of a funny, again, a funny expression. Now, this word bloody is a British expression, and I don't know how you would explain this. It's kind of like saying, I mean, to be honest, if someone says that, it's kind of like saying the word damn, you know? So if you say that, you know, the British use this word a lot. I know that some of my British friends say it's not a very good word, but I think probably in modern England, it's used a lot. But anyhow, if you say something that's bloody, it doesn't, you know, blood is what? Shit, right? So if you say something, it's another way of saying like damn. It's like it's a way of making something seem more extreme. Okay. I don't think we would say that. I don't usually hear it that way. It's more like a negative word. Like, you know, if someone says, I'm bloody tired, right? Layla, you know, or, you know, this is bloody awful. You know, this is terrible. So it gets used with negative words, like the word damn might be used. Okay, so it's a very British word. You don't hear that used in America almost never. But Americans, I think they understand what it means, okay? So, and here we use the word Brit, B-R-I-T. Of course, Brit is just a slang word for saying a British person, right? So British, you know, you refer to, nowadays people say UK or United Kingdom, but Great Britain is a very common way of saying something. So from that, we say the British people, okay? British is a very common word. Now, when we say Great Britain, of course, that includes the whole of the United Kingdom, right? So that could be, with British people, that includes everybody. That would be the English. Who else? The Welsh, okay? The Scots, we could say, or Scottish, you know. Northern Ireland, yeah. Wales, okay, the Welsh. The Welsh are from Wales, okay. Okay. Yeah, the Scots. You mentioned Northern Ireland. That's a little part of Ireland, you know, Bay Ireland. So anyhow, yeah, the Scots, the Scottish. Scot, you know, you could say he's a Scotsman, Scotswoman, or they are Scottish. And then Welsh is people from Wales, okay. So why don't we say these words together? Wales. Wales. Welsh. Welsh. Let's just say the name of their country. Scotland. Scotland. Scottish. This is a 形容詞. Scot. Okay, that would be like or you know, we could say a Scot or Scot. Yeah, Scotsman. So British is in everybody, and so for short, sometimes we say a Brit. Okay, we can use that as a 形容詞, or we can use it as a 名詞, right? You could say he's a Brit, okay, or there are many Brits in Taiwan, okay, or we could say my Brit friend. So it's basically a short way of saying British, okay? So we haven't said this yet. Let's say it together. Great Britain. Great Britain. British. British. Brit. Brit. Yeah, so the word British is a very common word. If you said English, that would only refer to the part of England, right? And would not necessarily refer to all of the United Kingdom, like Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland. But if you say British, then we know that's just something from the United Kingdom. So it's a very common way of saying things like that. Any questions about that? Yeah. No, we wouldn't say that. Yeah. Yeah. Anglo is more of the person that comes from that background. So if we say, like we often say many Americans and people from Britain, we call them Anglo-Saxon. Okay, Saxon, you know, England has a very, the Great Britain has a very interesting history, right? And so there have been many invasions of Great Britain of people from Europe. And so people, we often say, we talk about Anglo-Saxon culture, or people who are in that country are, not all, everyone, but many people are Anglo-Saxon, or their background is, their Beijing is Anglo-Saxon. Does everybody know that word is? I don't know if you have a word in Chinese. Yeah. So, yeah. Why don't we say together, Anglo-Saxon. Anglo-Saxon. And from the word Anglo, you can see where England comes from, right? It's related. So, yeah. Okay, so anyhow, that's a big history lesson on, on England and Great Britain and the United Kingdom. And it's very funny because Great Britain or the United Kingdom, you know, there's always some stress there, right? Because I still remember when I visited Scotland, you know, Sugaland, many years ago, my Scottish friends there, it was in the summertime, and it was in July, early July, and all the Scottish bars and restaurants, not all, but many of them, were celebrating July 4th. And I thought, that's kind of strange. They had July 4th celebration or specials or dinners. And I asked my friend, I said, why are they celebrating American Independence Day? And my Scottish friend said, well, we're celebrating because you have your independence and we want our independence. So a lot of people in Scotland want to be 独立. They want to be independent. They want to leave the United Kingdom and be their own country, you know, independent country. So it's funny because they were celebrating American Independence Day because they wanted to be, they were hoping that Scotland someday would be independent. Yeah. I think we would just say Anglo-Saxon. They don't talk about the Normans. I mean, there was a Norman invasion in 1066. That's a long time ago. So I would say that they say, I wouldn't say that most people are that way anymore. I mean, if you look at England today or the Great Britain, the UK today, it's very, very diverse. There's many different, I mean, the president, the recent prime minister was Indian, right? Indian background. So you have all kinds of ethnic groups inside the UK. It's very, very diverse. Yeah, Celtic, yeah. We say Celtic, yeah. The earliest people we would call would be like Celtic culture. Yeah, that's a 形容词. Okay, so that's an even earlier culture. It's funny because we say, some people say Celtic, but I think usually we say Celtic. Yeah, Celtic. And that's the earliest people in England, like almost like the 原住民 of England. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so that's, yeah. Mm-hmm. Mel Gibson, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Braveheart. Yeah. That was William Wallace. Yeah. It's very funny because before that movie ever came out, when I went to visit Scotland the first time, my friend, there's a monument, a big monument to William Wallace, the guy in the movie Braveheart, if you've seen that movie with Mel Gibson, who was fighting against England for independence. And he was killed. But anyhow, yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and read this article, and we'll see what they say. So it says here, I'll read this. It says, Orlaith Hallahan, that's a strange name, but anyhow, Orlaith, I've never heard that name. Orlaith Hallahan never sits on the couch, never wears a sweater, doesn't take out the trash. Why would she? She's English. Hallahan sits on the sofa, wears a jumper, takes out the rubbish. Okay, so we'll stop here. This is a paragraph. Okay, so right away here we can see the difference. Now, I will say something before we go further on this. I want to say that not all these words are exclusive or they're never used in either country. I think we say interchangeable. Okay, but let's look at these words here. First of all, what is a couch? Yeah, a couch is like a sofa. Okay. So I think in Taiwan we talk about safa, right? You know, we always talk about a sofa, right? But a couch is a word that we often use too, right? It's a word, if you went to America and you said, I have a big couch in my living room, you know, my 客厅, no, it's usually padded. It's usually comfortable. Like it's not a wood chair. It's more like a sofa. So the word couch is also used in America. I've seen that word. I've used that word. But why don't we say it together? Couch. Couch. And then that's the other word, sofa. Sofa. Okay, so the next word, sweater. Sweater. Now, that word is very American. But what's the British word? Jumper. Okay, so let's say it together. Jumper. Jumper. Now, it's very funny because I know what this word means, but when I see it, I have to pause and think, jumper, what's a jumper? And then I remember, oh, that's the British word for sweater. Okay? So it is funny because I know that word, but it's not a very familiar word. And if you said jumper to Americans, most Americans would have no idea what you're talking about. They'd be like, what? What's a jumper? You know, it sounds like tiao, right? Jump to jump. A what? Yeah, but this is a sweater. How do you say that? Yeah, okay. Yeah, so jumper. Okay. She does, let's say this word together, trash. Trash. Okay, and then this word, rubbish. Rubbish. Now, in America, if you say rubbish, people will know what you're talking about. Sometimes you could say, oh, there's lots of rubbish on the road right now. But we also could say there's lots of trash. So sometimes when we say a 垃圾桶, we might say a rubbish can or a trash can or a rubbish bin or a trash bin, okay? We can use those words for 垃圾桶. What? Bin, yeah, but in America we also say bin is more British, but in America we might say can. But in America, if you said bin, I think most people would be okay with that. They would know what you're talking about. So it's the same idea. If you say rubbish bin, trash bin, rubbish can, trash can, all mean the same thing. 垃圾桶, okay? So anyhow, there's that word. Okay, and so sweater, trash. Okay, so let's read this part together at the beginning. Let's read this first paragraph together. Orlaith Hallahan never sits on the couch. Couch. Never wears a sweater. Sweater. Doesn't take out the trash. Why would she? She's English. Hallahan sits on the sofa, wears a jumper, takes out the rubbish. Okay, so I just wanted to add one word here. I think I heard him say it. Couch is, there's a funny expression. We refer to people as a couch potato. Does anybody know? And I will say, Americans do know this expression. This might even be, I don't know if this started in America or right. So somebody who just sits on the couch all day and watches TV or relaxes and they don't move much. We say they're a couch potato. You know, potato is 马铃薯, right? So somebody who just likes to sit and they don't. To be honest, when we say someone's a couch potato, it sounds like they're a bit lazy, right? 懒惰, right? Because they don't move. They just sit on the couch all day. So anyhow, why don't we say it together? Couch potato. Couch potato. Okay, so if you have a friend who doesn't go out of their house and they sit at home and watch TV all day, you might tell them, you say, you're becoming a couch potato, okay? There's another funny word I've heard. I don't hear it as much, but sometimes people, when they go to, maybe they're traveling around, maybe traveling around America, and they want, instead of staying in a hotel, they stay in all their friends' houses, and they sleep on their friends' sofas, okay? So we call that sofa surfing. You know what surfing is, right? Like 冲浪, right? Surfing, like you're surfing. But it's if someone goes around, they're staying at all their friends' houses, so you go to your first friend and you say, can I sleep on your sofa? Yeah, sure, go ahead. And then you go travel to the next city and you find another friend and you sleep on their sofa. And then you say, can I sleep there? So instead of spending money, you just stay in all your friends' houses and you sleep on their sofas, okay? I will say a sofa is quite comfortable to sleep on. I've done this before. I've sofa surfed before. And, you just get a pillow, and it's usually long, and it's comfortable, right? So why don't we say it together? Sofa surfing. Sofa surfing. Right. So there's these funny expressions from these words. Okay. So let's go on and look at keep going here. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sofa. Yeah, that's called a pull out. Oops, sorry, that's two L's. A pull out. Sofa. My mother has one of these. And whenever I go back to Bingzhou, I sleep on that. So I don't know if you've seen it, but it's a normal sofa, and then you pull under it and you pull it out, and it becomes a bed. It's very cool, actually. And there's a mattress. It opens up, and there's a mattress, and it's a regular bed. It's usually like a double bed because it's a sofa, so it's quite wide. So yeah, it's called a pull-out sofa, and it's very convenient when you have friends or guests coming to stay with you. You take the sofa and it becomes a bed. You have to take the cushions off, but when you pull it out, there's actually a mattress inside, and it becomes a bed. Of course, you put sheets on it, and yeah. No, I haven't seen it. Probably most people. Here's the thing in Taiwan. I think I've told you this before. There's one really big difference, I think, between Taiwan and America, and that is Americans like to entertain at home. They like to invite people to their home for dinner. They like to invite guests to stay at their house. But in Taiwan, that doesn't happen as much, I feel like you don't go to eat at your friends' homes. You eat outside. You go to a restaurant. And if your friends need somewhere to stay, they stay in a hotel, right? Or somewhere outside. You don't say, oh, come stay in my house. I'm sure that people do that. I know people stay at their friends' homes sometimes. But normally, I don't think that happens too often, So I think this is a bit different, yeah. Okay, so let's go on here. It says, I don't normally use American words when I speak. I try to stick with the British English ones, but my friends do quite a lot. Hallahan 10, oh, she's only 10, okay, said one school day evening after a play date. Play date, I'm pretty sure that's an Americanism too. Her mother, Grayon, chimed in. Okay, so this is a 10-year-old girl talking about this. So she says, I don't normally use American words. I try to stick with British English. Okay, one school day evening. Okay, when we say this becomes a 形容词, right? So a school day means what? Monday through Friday, right? It's the day you go to school. So a school day evening. We could say, if you're not a student, we would say a weekday evening. But weekday usually is one word, weekday, weekday becomes a 形容词. But here we say school day evening after a play date. Now this is a funny expression, but we use this a lot for kids. It's usually for parents, right? If your kids, you want your kids to go hang out, spend time at another family's children, you might invite their children to come to your house, or you might send your kids over to their house. And we call that a play date. Of course, it's not a romantic date. It's not for, like a normal 约会. It's your children have a date with other children. They spend time together, and they play together. That's why we call it a play date. Okay, so here she says play date. I'm pretty sure that's an Americanism too. So she thinks this is an American expression. Her mother chimed in. Now, this is a very interesting expression, chimed in. Chime, Yeah, chime is like a bell, okay? It's like a bell or a bell-like sound, okay? Like, and so, yeah, it's kind of like a bell. So I'll give you an example. You know, you can buy those, we call them wind chimes. It's like a, yeah, you hang it in your house, and when the wind blows, it makes a nice sound, right? Sometimes it sounds like a bell if it's made from metal. So we call that a wind chime, okay? So a chime is like a bell or a bell-like sound, okay? You can, like sometimes with a church in America, with churches, they have chimes, and they're very, you can hear these different notes and different sounds, and it sounds very nice, actually, very peaceful. But anyhow, here it says her mother chimed in. Now what that means is when you chime in, it basically means it's another way of saying they added, they commented. So if someone's talking, then someone else says something or adds something to the conversation, you can say they chimed in. So it's basically saying she added, A-D-D-E-D, okay? She also said, okay? So it's a funny expression, but we use it quite often. Someone chimes in on something. It means they gave their opinion or they added something to the conversation. Does everybody understand that? Okay, so why don't we say that word together? Chime. Chime. Chimed in. Chimed in. Okay, so let's read this. I don't normally use American words when I speak. I try to stick with British English ones. Let's say it again. British English ones. But my friends do quite a lot. Hallahan 10 said one school day evening after a play date. Play date. What's this? Okay, I am pretty sure that's an Americanism too. Let's say it again. That's an Americanism too. Her mother, Grian, chimed in. Right. I don't know how to pronounce that name. I don't know if it's, I've heard Grian before, but Grian. Yeah, I'm not quite sure. Yeah. So they're obviously interviewing some children. Okay, so let's go on here. It says, the differences between American English and British and Irish English extend to spelling, we talked about that, pronunciation, idiom, and even how dates, numbers, and some punctuation are formatted. This gulf has long been a source of misunderstandings, superiority complexes, and humor. Okay, I don't know why this line is here, but this should not be here. Okay, and humor. Let's stop here and look at this because there's a lot of words here. Okay, so first of all, it says the differences between American English and British. So they even mention Irish English, Ireland, you know. And Ireland, of course, is next to UK, but it's not part of UK. It's part of it's a separate country, right? Okay, except for Northern Ireland. So it says Irish extend to. So extends to means it covers. If something extend means to go out to, right? Like if I extend my arm, it means I stretch my arm out to extend my arm. If you say I'm going to extend this class, it means I'm going to make this class longer, right? If let's say we decide to meet until 1 p.m., I say, okay, today we're going to extend our time until 1 p.m., or we're going to extend this class to 1 p.m. I'm going to extend my arm means to make it longer, okay? So extend is a good word. And of course, extend, if we want to turn it into a 名词, we add S-I-O-N, right? Extension. Okay, so we could say there is an extension in our class today, or there's an extension in the time that we have together. Okay, extension is a good word because it gets used in many different ways. It could be time or it could be anything. I'll give you an example. In my house, sometimes I have to plug something in, but the cord is too short, right? So I have to go, maybe I have to go use an extension cord, or we could say cable. And it's a long cord, and you plug it in, and then you can extend the cord so that it's longer. You can make it longer, right? So we say extension cord or extension cable. Why don't we say together, extension. Extension cord. Extension cable. Okay, extend to. Extend to. There's a funny word. Of course, I'm not as familiar with this, but it's interesting. Women have something called extensions, and I don't know if they use this much in Taiwan, but in other countries it's popular. Basically, it's a way to make your hair longer. So it's not a wig. But it's like I don't even know how it works. but basically, someone might say, "Oh, she's wearing extensions." She has her natural hair, but it's a way of making her hair longer. It's like but it's not a wig. I think it's different from wig. W-I-G is a wig, but this is like it's. Does everybody know what I'm talking about? No, it's not permanent. But it's anyhow. I don't know how it works, so you can figure it out. But some people, I've heard people say, "Oh, she's wearing extensions." It means it's making her hair longer than it really naturally is. But it's not a complete wig. I don't know. Maybe it is. Who knows? But anyhow, those are called extensions. Yeah. Okay, as a 名词. Okay, so let's go back to this. It says American English and British and Irish English, the differences, okay, the 不同, extend to what? Spelling. We talked about spelling. Pronunciation. What does everybody know pronunciation? Yeah. So we say how you pronounce something. Okay. So he gives a very good example, like schedule and schedule. The British say schedule, and the Americans say schedule, okay? And there's many other words like this that they're pronounced differently, okay? Okay, so why don't we say together, to pronounce. To pronounce. Sorry, that's a C-E at the end. And then pronunciation. Pronunciation. Okay, so we have spelling, pronunciation. What is an idiom? It's like a phrase, or sometimes we could say maybe kind of like an expression. Okay, an idiom. It's like someone said phrase, right? We use different phrases, like, or we might say an expression. Okay, so remember we just said, we were just talking about this. We were talking about, I thought we were talking about an expression. What were we? There was something we were just talking about. Anyhow, we use these different phrases and expressions. We in this class we've learned many different idioms, American idioms or expressions, and the British often have different expressions. They might say something and Americans be like, "What are you talking about? I don't understand that." Okay. So anyhow, why don't we say together idiom? Idiom. Okay, and then it says even how dates, okay, dates of course, numbers, and some punctuation. What's punctuation? Yeah, like a period, a comma, this is punctuation right here, right? This is punctuation right here, okay? How they are formatted. Now format is a I don't know what's the Chinese word for format. It's a system, a form of doing something, right? Like you can say, what if I have to write a report, what is the proper format? What format should I use? The way I know format gets used with 电脑 a lot, right? Like how is your computer programmed or formatted? What's the format on your program? So it's a way, a style or form of doing something, okay? I'll give you this one here. This is the one that I notice a lot. I can always tell if that person is from a more using British English, because how do the British write dates? Like what's today's date? Today is what, December 4th. So how do the Americans write December 4, but how do the British write December 4? Yeah. Well, no, they write 4 December. Yeah. The year is the same. I mean, they'll have the year, but they write 4 December. Okay? So tomorrow is 5 December. Okay? So this is when we write, not when they speak, but when they write English. Like if you get an email from somebody or a letter from somebody and they say, I will be meeting with you on 4 December, for this meeting, okay? But Americans would write, I will be meeting you, they'll write December 4, okay? So the British have I see this a lot. They put the number, the date in front of the month, okay? So that's a difference in how dates are formatted or written, okay? Okay, and then it says here, this gulf has long been a source of misunderstandings, superiority complexes, and humor. Okay, now, what is a gulf? Well, what's the original meaning of gulf? It's like a bay, right? Like we have the Gulf of, well, now Donald Trump calls it the Gulf of America, but yeah, it's the Gulf of Mexico or the Gulf of America, the Persian Gulf, or some people call it the Arabian Gulf. They have different names, but in Chinese it's a wan, right? Yeah, like a bay. Okay, but here when we say the Gulf, it means the gap, the difference. Okay, the gulf between him and me, or he and I, in our opinions, is very big. There's a big gulf between. It means there's a big space between us. There's a big gap between us. There's a big difference between us. Okay, so this is just an expression. Why don't we say together, gulf? Gulf. G-U-L-F. Okay, this gulf, or this difference, means for a long time, has been a source of misunderstandings. Of course, sometimes we don't understand the British, and the British don't understand us. Superiority complexes, and humor. Humor, of course, people joke about it. But what is a superiority complex? Yeah, so if you think you're better than somebody else, people say you have a superiority complex. Superior, this word superior, means better, okay? You could say, most people would say that a Japanese car is superior to an American car. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not putting down America. I'm sure Americans make great cars, but most people would say that. They'd say Japanese cars have superior quality, or they are superior to American cars, okay? So superiority becomes a noun, 名词. And you can say if someone has a superiority complex, it means they feel like they're better than other people, okay? So what they're saying here is this difference between Americanisms and British English is that sometimes maybe the British think they're better than Americans, and sometimes the Americans think they're better than the British, okay? So why don't we say this word together, superior. Superior. This is a good word. We use this a lot, right? This is superior to that, or I think that's superior to this. Okay, and then superiority. Superiority. And then complex. Complex. Right, okay. Now there's actually another word. What's the opposite of a superiority complex? Yeah, so if someone feels the opposite of superior is inferior. Oops, sorry, that's an R. Just write that. Inferior. And then we can change that to inferiority. So inferior means it's less than, it's not as good as. So, we were just saying that some people think that Japanese cars are superior to American cars. We could say some people think American cars are inferior to Japanese cars. So it's like turning it around, right? So why don't we say together, inferior. 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 And we usually say superior to or inferior to. We use the word to, okay? And then let's take that word, inferiority. Inferiority. So sometimes might say an inferiority complex. If you think that everyone is better than you, then you have an inferiority complex. You know, you think, oh, they're better than me, he's smarter than me, she's faster than me. You know, that's an inferiority complex, okay, a way of thinking. Okay. Okay, any questions about this? There's a lot of, yeah. I don't know. I'm sure that I've heard Irish expressions, Irish English, but I'm not actually sure what's the difference between a British expression or a British word and an Irish word. I'm sure there are many words, but yeah. What? C-R. See, I don't even know that. I have no idea. Yeah, I've never heard that. Yeah. So. What? How do you, what? Oh, Auld Lang Syne, yeah. But Auld Lang Syne is a song, I believe. Yeah, it's Irish or. Yeah. I think it's Irish, but it's a song. Americans know that song, Auld Lang Syne. Yeah. Scottish? Oh, okay. See, I'm all confused. I can't tell the difference between British. I mean, there are some things Scottish or Irish. I'm not you know, if I lived in England, I might probably know those differences. But Americans often, we don't know the specifics of where those words came from, or which one's Irish, or which one's Scottish, or which one's English. Yeah. So, but it's very interesting. Yeah. Okay, so let's read this. The differences between. Let's say it again. The differences between American English and British and Irish English extend to spelling, pronunciation, idiom, and even how dates, numbers, and some punctuation are formatted. This gulf has long been a source of misunderstandings, superiority complexes. Let's say it again. Superiority complexes and humor. Okay, I just want to say something. I think you know this, but this word here, punctuation, this is pronounced as a ch sound, not a t sound. So it's punctuation, chew. Okay, so let's say again, punctuation. Punctuation. That actually makes me think of another word that's very similar but very different, and that is the word punctual. Right, which is, I'm not punctual. So, but punctual means on time, okay? So if someone is very punctual, or if someone says, please be punctual, it means be on time, okay? So why don't we say it together, punctual. Punctual. Yeah, you can see those two words are very similar, punctual and punctuation. Okay, so yeah, it's a, what? I guess so. I mean, you would be early, but punctual, yeah, just simply means to be on time. I mean, I know in some cultures, to be punctual means to be early. Like someone told me, I don't know if this is true, they said in Germany, like 德国, or maybe 瑞士, if you say 10 o'clock, being on punctual means you're there at 9:50 or 9:55. So you actually should be there early. Whereas my friends in Mexico say that if they say 10 o'clock and you show up at 10:25, it's normal. It's okay. Yeah. So, yeah. Okay, so let's go on here. It says, we have really everything in common with America nowadays, except, of course, language. The Irish writer Oscar Wilde noted in 1887, a little more than half a century later, Wilde's fellow Irishman, George Bernard Shaw, a playwright and literary critic, was credited with a crack about how the United States and Britain were two countries divided by a common language. So that's kind of I'll explain that. That's kind of funny. But so let's go on back here. It says, this guy here, Oscar Wilde, does everybody know who that is? Very famous writer, okay, Oscar Wilde. He wrote I think he wrote plays too. But yeah, he's Irish. He's from Ireland. But he lived a long time ago, of course, 1887. So Irish writer Oscar Wilde said, we have really everything. This is over 100 years ago, 150 years ago. He says, we have everything in common with America nowadays. Now, the word nowadays simply means what? Today, right now, okay? So why don't we say together, nowadays. Nowadays. Right, it's when you look at the word, you can think now is 现在, right? And days means basically today, now, okay? So nowadays. Except language. So he says, we have everything in common with the Americans today, except our language, okay? So he said this in 1887. A little more than half a century later, how many years is half a century? 50, right? Because a century is 100年, right? So half a century is 50 years. So a little more than half a century later, so it means a little bit more than 50 years later, just over 50 years, Wilde's fellow, okay, his Irishman, okay, he means this guy was also an Irishman. Fellow Irishman means, you're all fellow Taiwanese, right? So we say fellow means you're the same, okay? His fellow Irishman, George Bernard Shaw. Now this is another very famous writer, a playwright and literary critic. Now, what is a playwright? Yeah. So you can see a play. What's a play? Yeah. Right, of course. You might think, okay, this doesn't look right. Okay. Right, this, of course, is not the way we write a play. Write is W-R-I-T-E, right? But a write is somebody who creates or makes something. Like I'm trying to think of some other. Yeah, but I'm just trying to think of other ways we use that word, write. There's playwright, and no, it's not a very common word, but anyhow, it basically means a creator, someone who produces or makes something. It's almost like the word smith, like ironsmith, right? Ironsmith is someone who makes things out of iron, right? So a playwright is somebody who creates plays, writes plays. Okay, anyhow, the main thing is you know what it means. Let's say together, playwright. Playwright. And literary critic. So literary critic means that he wrote he was a critic of writing. Okay, you know what a critic is, right? Yeah. How do you say critic in Chinese? But yeah, but it's not, when people think of criticism, they think of piping, right? But critic, when you write a critic, yeah, 评论 maybe is a better way of saying it, because it could be positive, right? It's not necessarily negative. It could be negative or positive. It could 肯定 or 否定的. You could say, oh, I love this writing. I think this is a great novel. This 小说 is really wonderful. That's still your critic. Or I could be a food critic, right? A food critic means I go to different restaurants and I try the food and I say, do I like it or don't I like it? Or what is it like? I introduce it. So yeah, it's like 评论, right? Okay, so a literary critic is someone who looks at literature, like novels or writing, and they are critic, okay? So why don't we say together, literary critic. Literary critic. Okay, so George Bernard Shaw was credited with, okay, means that people gave him credit for saying this, with a crack about how the United States and Britain were. So when we say a crack, people might think, what does that mean? Yeah, it's like a little joke that's funny, like a wisecrack, okay? So if you make a comment or a joke about someone that's kind of like, now a crack could be a kind of, it could be like a bit of a criticism too, right? Like, it could be often when I think of someone making a crack about something, he just used the word wisecrack. It's basically a kind of a comment, but it could be a very witty comment. It could be a very sarcastic comment. Okay? What does witty mean? It means smart, but it means smart in a quick way. You know, sometimes when you say something and one of your friends has a quick comment that's kind of funny, right? Or they come back with something, we say they are very witty. It means they're very smart and they have this good way of saying something or funny way of saying something. So we could say a witty comment. A comment, you know, just means something you say. But you know what sarcastic means, right? Yeah. So we say, so sometimes when someone is, they might make a very sarcastic wisecrack, okay? So, well, okay, let me give you a better example. What if I said, if I walked in here and I said, what if I said, sorry I'm late, and one of you said, well, that's the first time, you know? So that would be a witty or sarcastic comment or a wisecrack, right? Okay, so that's a way of coming back and making a funny or sarcastic or witty remark. We could say a comment or a remark. This is a 名词, right? So, you know, when you just say a few words, a remark, or you remark on something, or you comment on something, these are good ways. So why don't we say together, wisecrack. Wisecrack. Witty comment. Witty comment. Sarcastic remark. Sarcastic remark. Okay, or you could say sarcastic comment or witty remark. Yeah. 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 There's a similar comment from Winston Churchill. What did he say? I think he was, you know, Winston Churchill liked to drink a lot, right? He drank and drank. He drank alcohol and smoked cigars, but he drank a lot of alcohol. People are amazed at how much alcohol he could drink. But I think, if I remember this correctly, he was at a party or dinner, and some woman was really angry at him, and she said, "Mr. Churchill, you're drunk," and he said, "Yes, I'm drunk, and you're ugly, and but I'll be sober in the morning." That's what he said. So she said, "You're drunk," and he said, "Yes, but you're ugly, but I'll be sober in the morning." Like, means that when I wake up in the morning, I'll be okay, but you won't be okay, right? So yeah, that was a very, of course, that's very cruel, but that was his wisecrack, right? Okay, yeah. So yeah, so anyhow, George Bernard Shaw was credited with a crack about how the United States and Britain were two countries divided by a common language, which is a funny way of saying it, because if you have something in common, you're not divided, right? It's a funny way of saying it, because if you say this, if you have something in common, you should be united, right? It should be two countries united by a common language, right? That's what it should say. But he says there are two countries divided by a common language. So what he's saying is that we share the same language, but it divides us because you have your way of saying it, and we both speak English, but we're divided by that English because you have your expressions and I have my, like we've been talking about. Does everybody understand that? So this is actually a very witty comment. You know, it's a funny comment. You could say it's a paradox. Yeah, it's a paradoxical expression. It's there's probably different ways of saying. Oxymoron's different. Oxymoron is when you say, like, you take two words, like a giant shrimp, okay? This is a very funny word. We don't use this word very often, but yeah. Oxymoron is when you take two words that mean the opposite and you put them together. Like if I said, you know what a 下子 is, right? If we say a giant shrimp, because shrimp means small, right? But we say a giant shrimp, right? You had, what'd you say? I don't know. But that's actually like a, I'm trying to think of another oxymoron. Well, but night is, I guess, yeah, maybe a white knight. Yeah, it means it's the two words should not be together, but they are put together, like giant shrimp, jumbo shrimp. Trying to think if there's another good oxymoron. I'm sure there's many. I know there's many. Yeah, you could say. But that's an expression. So oxymoron is usually two words that have the opposite meaning, but we put them together to mean something new, like a giant shrimp. Like he made a joke. He said democratic China, right? So democratic and China, we say, well, they're opposites, right? But we put them together. Of course, that's a joke, but yeah. So anyhow, that's would be. So why don't we say together oxymoron? Oxymoron. Now, I just have to tell you, because I know some of you are probably thinking this already, moron is a different word. Moron means 笨蛋, basically. If you say somebody is a moron, it means they're an idiot, okay? They're stupid, okay? So if you ever see the word moron, it means someone's just really dumb, okay? So if you're having an argument with your friend, you say, don't be a moron, or you're a moron, okay? It means you're dumb, you're 笨蛋, okay? Yeah. Yeah. Who? Oh, yeah. Jerome Powell. Yeah. Stubborn ox. Okay. Yeah. But that's not an oxymoron because oxes can be stubborn, right? If you say a stubborn donkey, it would make sense, right? Because donkey or ox, they can be very stubborn. But if you said I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. I'll think of some later. If I think of any new oxymorons, I'll share them with you. Yeah. Okay, so let's go back to this and read this together. There's a lot here. Okay. Let's start at the top here. It says, read this. We have really everything in common. With America nowadays. Except, of course, language. The Irish writer, Oscar Wilde, noted in 1887, a little more than half a century later, Wilde's fellow Irishman, George Bernard Shaw, a playwright and literary critic. Let's say it again. Literary critic was credited with a crack about how the United States and Britain were two countries divided by a common language. Okay, so that's that's just a funny, very witty comment. Okay, so let's go on. It says, never mind that nobody seems to know where, in what context, or indeed, whether Shaw actually said it. Okay, so they're saying we don't really know if he actually said that. But it seems there's now a new, or at least revisited chapter to the quarrelsome linguistic politics of tomato versus tomato. Okay, let's go on. It says, teachers across Britain say they are increasingly observing or seeing, watching, their students use words like candy instead of sweets. Diaper, not nappy. Elevator for lift. Apartment as opposed to flat. And other words and phrases they associate with American English. Okay, so let's look at this. First of all, this is not talking about a spelling. This is not how they spell it. They spell it the same, like this, with T-A-M-A-T-O. But here they're writing it this way so that you understand how they say it. Okay? So in America we say tomato, right? But in England or in Britain they say tomato. So that's pronunciation, okay? Now again, this is not the actual spelling. This is so that you understand how they say it, okay? So why don't we say it together? Tomato. 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 There's actually a song about this where they talk about this. You say tomato, I say tomato. You know, it's actually a song about romantic differences. Like a man and woman cannot get along, and he says, you say tomato, I say tomato. Let's call the whole thing off. Let's say swanla, okay? Because we can't get along. Okay, so it says here, teachers across Britain say they're increasing more and more. They're seeing their students use words like candy. So of course we all know candy, right? But in England and in many countries, they say sweets, okay? So if you say, I'm going to go to the sweet store, it means I'm going to go buy tanguo, right? You know, candy, you know? Or you can say, he likes to eat sweets. It means he likes to eat candy, okay? So that's a very common word. Now this word, what is a diaper? You know what a diaper is, right? But in the UK, they say nappy, okay? Nappy, okay. Have you heard that word before, nappy? Have you? Okay, it's not, if you went to America and you said, I need to buy some nappies, Americans would be like, what are you talking about, right? I have no idea. Okay, why don't we say together, nappy? Nappy. You know what a nap is, right? Taiwanese like to 睡午觉, right? To take a nap, but this is a different word. Okay, now of course we all know elevator, but if you go, I will say this, if you go to Shanghai, Hong Kong, you'll see this word, lift, okay? Okay, so lift, okay, lift would be also 电梯, right? So, and then apartment, of course, also I notice in Hong Kong and the UK, they say flat. So you might say, oh, he's renting a flat in Taichung, okay, or he has a very big flat, okay? So instead of saying apartment, they say the word flat as a 名词 for I don't know. Yeah, I haven't been there in a long time. Maybe. Often they'll just say G, like ground floor, and then it'll be G, and then yeah. But yeah, yeah. So everybody understand those differences? I'll give you one or two more. Like my car. Like today I drove my car, right? In the back of the car, where you open it up, we call that, in America, we call that what? A trunk. Okay. But what do we call that in the UK? You're close, but we call it a boot. Okay? Boot is like, you know, like 牛仔, you know, yeah. But we say boot. So if you say, put your bag in the boot of the car, it means the trunk of the car, okay? Yes, that's another one. Yeah, good. So truck, 卡车, lorry. Yeah. Okay, that's a very British word. If you said lorry in America, Americans would be like, what's a lorry? Okay, okay. But we go back to the car, you know, we have, you know, with a car you have the, you know, the cars, well, not all cars look like this anymore, but, you know, so we have the trunk, right, and the boot. But here on the front of the car, where the engine is, we call that the hood, right? When you have to raise the hood of the car. But the British have a funny word. Bonnet, yes. Okay, you know what a bonnet is? When you yeah, it's like a baby or a woman might wear a bonnet, especially 100 years ago, they wore this special head covering over their head, like made out of cloth. Not a hat, but it's like something you pull over your head like this. That's called a bonnet, okay? And so, so the British say, if you have to open the bonnet of your car, that's the hood of the car, okay? I just thought of another one. Now, this is not a word. This is a spelling. And I've seen this in Taichung. So, you know, in Taichung, there is, you know, everybody knows the Michelin, you know, for the restaurants. They have this but, you know, Michelin is a tire company. They make tires, Lun Tai, right? If you've ever driven down in Taichung, like I saw one store, Michelin has a big store on Wenxing Lu, Sanduan. And I saw the sign, and how do they spell tire? Yeah, T-Y-R-E, okay, instead of tire. Okay, which is very funny. When I see that, I'm like, what? You know, that's really strange. But yeah, so the Michelin stores in Taiwan with their signs, look for it. It says T-Y-R-E, tire, instead of T-I-R-E. Okay, yeah. 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 Yeah, Serviette. I think, you know, in England, I'm guessing if you said napkin, is it E? Is like a napkin. Yeah, that's a really, I think if you said napkin, I think they would know what you're saying. But, yeah, so anyhow, but serviette, yeah, I've seen that word. Let me just think of one. I'm sorry, we could do this all day, but there's one or two more maybe. Even in Canada, sometimes I see they use these British words, and they don't use them in America. I'll think of more later, I'm sure. Yeah. Anyhow, let's go back to the article. So these are very interesting, but let's go to the beginning of the sentence. It says here, I see that word get used both ways. Yeah, I've seen it go both ways, although eggplant's more common in America. So yeah. So it says here, George Bernard Shaw said this. He said, never mind that nobody seems to know where or in what context, it means in what situation, or indeed whether Shaw actually said that. So nobody really knows if George Bernard Shaw said that or when he said it or why he said it. Okay, but it seems there's now a new, or at least revisited. Revisited means to come back to, right? If you have something you were talking about or something you were doing or some idea you had and you leave it, but then you come back to it, you say, I revisited that idea. It means I'm coming back to that idea. To revisit, visit means to visit, right? But to revisit means to go back to, okay? So they're coming back to a chapter. It means a time. When we say chapter here, we're not talking about a chapter in a book. We're talking about a time, a period, okay? To the quarrelsome linguistic politics. Okay, what is a quarrel? Quarrel is a argument, right? A dispute, a disagreement. This is a very good word, okay? I think we've learned this before, but we can learn it again. Let's say together, quarrel. Quarrel. So you can say, we are quarreling over which restaurant we should eat at, okay? Or we have a quarrel over this situation. Now, if someone is quarrelsome, it means that they are argumentative. They feel like quarreling. They want to argue. They like to argue, okay? So why don't we say together, quarrelsome. Quarrelsome. So if you say somebody is a very quarrelsome person, it means that they always argue. They argue a lot. They like to get in arguments. Okay, so a quarrelsome linguistic politics. Now, linguistic refers to language, okay? If you study linguistics in university, it means you study language, okay? So why don't we say together, linguistic. Linguistic. Now, this can be used as here it's used as a 形容词. So you could say, this whole article is talking about the linguistic differences between British English and American English, okay? We say linguistic. Now, if you are a person who studies languages, you are a linguist. Like a language expert is a linguist. Okay, so let's say together, linguist. Linguist. Okay, so here they're saying the linguistic or language politics of tomato versus tomato. So people are having this big argument, okay, over this. Okay. Okay, so let's read this together. Never mind that. Nobody seems to know where, in what context, or indeed whether Shaw actually said it. Said it. But it seems there's now a new, or at least revisited, let's say this again, at least revisited chapter to the quarrelsome linguistic politics of tomato versus tomato. Let's say it again. Of tomato versus tomato. Teachers across Britain say they are increasingly observing their students use words like candy instead of sweets, diaper, not nappy, elevator for lift, apartment as opposed to flat, and other words and phrases they associate with American English. American English. Okay. I wanted to say, there was something here I was looking at. Okay, I just want to mention one more time. When we say a chapter, this word gets used a lot. We could say, right now you are in a new chapter of life, right? This word gets used a lot this way. It means, when you read a book, there are many chapters, right? But when we talk about a period of time or we could say a chapter. Okay, so you could say this is a new chapter in our country's history. This is he is in a new stage. That's a good way of saying it, stage, S-T-A-G-E. It's a new time, a new period of life or in history or whatever. So we use that word chapter quite a bit, okay? So it's a good word to know. Sometimes when someone's really, really old, right, we might say they are in the final chapter of their life. Right? It means it's the very end, the last stage of their life. Okay. Okay, so let's go on and read this. It says when we say they, of course, we're talking about the British teachers. They view this, they see this, as part of a generalized transatlantic cultural creep facilitated by a daily, instant diet of TikTok, YouTube, Netflix, and other border-busting digital devices. Okay, let's look at this sentence together. So these British teachers, they see this, they view this, they think this is part of a general. General means what? Broad, right? Wide. Transatlantic. Okay, what is transatlantic? Atlantic is what? The ocean, right? And the Atlantic separates what two countries? Right, Great Britain and America, we have the Atlantic Ocean, right? So when we say transatlantic, it means across, we could say trans-Pacific, right? Transatlantic, so why don't we say it together? Transatlantic. Transatlantic. And here's an interesting expression, cultural creep. Now, creep has different meanings, okay? Creep can mean a creepy person, like somebody who's kind of 可怕的, right? Like... how do we say creepy person in Chinese? Creepy just means it makes you feel 很紧张. Yeah, 怕怕的, right? Like, okay, let's say you're walking down in Taichung at nighttime and you see this person following you and they're looking. You might say, that person's very creepy. Let's stay away from him. or he's acting in a very creepy way with that's C-R-E-E-P-Y, okay, or if he's a creep, I'll give you an example. Let's say, I know women have to deal with this. Sometimes they're at a bar and they're drinking and they're having fun, and this guy comes up to them and he says, "Hi, what's your name?" or "What's your phone number?" And you're like, "That guy's a creep. Get him out of here," right? So that's what we use that expression a lot. If somebody's just acting in a very strange way and they make you feel uncomfortable, we might say that person is acting in a creepy way, or we could say they are a creep, okay? So why don't we say together, creep? Creepy. Okay, but that's not the meaning here, okay? This is a different meaning. So a cultural creep, what does creep also mean? Creep means to come up on somebody very slowly. Maybe that's why we have the way creepy. It's like have you ever watched a cat, a mao, 小猫, and they're going after something and they're moving very slowly, like if they see a bird or a mouse and they're moving very slowly, we say they are creeping towards the mouse. It means they're moving very slowly and silently, okay? Sort of something. There's another word for that we often use. Yeah, we could say they're sneaking up on something, but we could also say they are stalking. Yeah. So we have a stalker, stalking. This word, actually, you can see the connection with the word creep. In Taiwan recently, the government passed a new law, 一个法律, against, we say, anti-stalker or anti-stalking. Does anybody know what stalking means if we talk about the law, legal, in the court? It means somebody who follows somebody and doesn't let them alone, right? So I know this happens a lot with famous people. If you're a movie star and somebody's like, "Oh, I love you, I want to get married to you," and they just follow you every day. They're following you around, and you have to call the police and say they cannot follow. But stalking, unfortunately this happens in other places. Like in Taiwan, we've seen some tragedies where ex-boyfriend or ex-husband will stalk his ex-girlfriend or ex-wife, and he will keep stalking her. And we've seen a couple cases where he killed her, right? We call that stalking, okay? So to stalk is like to sneak up or follow or creep after someone. So these words are all very similar. So someone like that, we call them a stalker, okay? Someone who does that, okay? So why don't we say these words together? Stalk, stalk, stalker, stalker, stalking, and then, of course, sneak. Okay, sneak. So cultural creep means when the culture is another culture, like what they're saying here is the American culture is slowly, little by little, it's creeping into British culture. It's influencing British culture. It's like it's coming in slowly, but it's coming and it's happening, right? Does everybody understand my idea there? Okay, so we call that a cultural creep. There's a word, and this is a word we don't use every day, but I'll just share it with you. We call this mission creep. This is a word we use in business and we use it in government. Sometimes a mission, you know what a mission is? A mission is a job or a task that you have, right? Let's say you say, this is our mission. This is what we have to do, right? Mission creep means when you start doing something, but then it starts getting wider and wider and wider. And you're supposed to do this, but then suddenly you're doing this, and then we're doing this, and it gets broader and broader and broader, and suddenly we're doing many things that we did not intend to do. That's called mission creep because it's just slowly getting, without noticing, it's getting broader and broader and broader. So, I'll give you an example. If you're, let's say you're a teacher, and your school says, we have a club after school. Would you help with this club as a teacher? And you say, okay, yeah, no problem. They say, oh, yeah, it'll only be every once a week, it'll be 1个钟头 after school. And you say, okay, sure, no problem. But then you go there, and after 1 month or 2 months, then it becomes 90 minutes. And then they say, oh, can we add another day? Oh, now it's 2 days. And now can we add another hour? Oh, and then you have to go do this. And it gets, your responsibility just gets broader and broader and broader. We call that mission creep. It just gets bigger and bigger. And of course, suddenly you're working like 6 hours a week on this club, right? Even though they said it was 1 hour. Does everybody understand that? Okay. So anyhow, let's go back to a general transatlantic cultural creep facilitated by, facilitate means helped by, to be assisted by, to help. If you facilitate something, it means you help something, you assist it. By a what? By a daily, instant diet. Okay, now diet is food, right? But we can also have a diet of information, right? Or our diet of entertainment. What do we watch for TV? Where do we get our, what's our daily intake? You know, diet is what you bring in, like food or music or entertainment or whatever. Okay, so diet of what? TikTok, YouTube, Netflix, and other border-busting digital services. Now, border, you know what a border is, right? Border is like the line between two countries, right? But we say border-busting, it means it breaks the border. Because why? If you watch TikTok, YouTube, or Netflix, it doesn't matter where you live, right? Doesn't matter if you live in the UK or in France or in America, it crosses, it breaks the border. It can move across borders, no problem, because it's digital. So they're saying, I think you understand this, but I'll just explain real quick. It just means that these teachers can see that these American expressions are slowly coming into British education and British children because these American digital services like Netflix and TikTok are creeping across the border into the UK, and students can watch these anytime, right? They can watch it instant. I know in Taiwan there's some concern about Douyin, right? Because they say, you know, maybe, you know, the Gongchangdang can say, yeah, China's a great country. It's, you know, we have democracy. And of course, maybe if you're a Qingzhaonian and you watch Douyin every day and you see these channels, you might say, oh yeah, China's a great country. It's a Mingzhu, you know, all this. So that's, we call that border busting creep, right? Little by little, it's coming in. Okay, does everybody understand that? Sorry, it's a little bit complicated, but there's a lot of interesting expressions here. Okay, let's read this. It says here, they view this as part of a generalized transatlantic cultural creep. Cultural creep. Facilitated by a daily instant diet of TikTok, YouTube, Netflix, and other border-busting digital services. Let's say it again. Border-busting digital services. Okay, let's read this. It says, you hear bits in their speech. You see bits in their writing, and actual American slang words, they use those all the time, said Shabnam Ahmed, head of the English department at a school in Bury St. Edmunds, a town near Cambridge. Okay, so bits means what? What's a bit? A little piece of something, right? If you're eating your cookie and there's a little bit of the cookie left, it means a little piece of, okay? So it means you hear a little bit in their speech, you see a little bit in their writing, and actual American slang words they use all the time. You know what slang is, right? We have many different kinds of slang words in English, in Chinese, I'm sure. In every language there is slang expressions that are very casual, right? Like earlier I introduced you to the word Brit, right? Brit is a slang word for British, right? Okay, it's a word, it's not a formal word, but we say it as a slang word. Okay, so let's read this together. You hear bits in their speech. You see bits in their writing. And actual American slang words, they use those all the time. Said Shabnam Ahmed, head of the English department at a school in Bury St. Edmunds, A town near Cambridge. You know where Cambridge is very famous for what? Yeah, Oxford University, Cambridge, yeah. In fact, many people say, I go to Cambridge, right? That means I go to Oxford, you know. Okay, so it says here, the pupils she teaches are ages 11 to 16. The other day, one of my students called me Unc. And I thought, what does that mean? Her students helped her out. Miss, it means you're old. Ahmed said she was told. She's 34. Ahmed said she's not always sure if the words she hears her pupils use originate in the United States or reach them through other avenues, such as Britain's rich, multicultural urban areas, where slang is often spread nationally through music and the internet, and British English is often influenced by various Englishes, American, but also Jamaican patois, African Englishes, South Asian languages, and various forms of speech. Boy, this is a long sentence. Linked to the British working class. Okay, sorry, this is a super long sentence. Okay, so let's just look at this. Okay. So first of all, you know this word, right? Pupil, what's that mean? Student, right. And we use this sometimes. It's not a word I use every day, but I would say student. But people say pupil. So why don't we say together pupil? Pupil. Okay. So the pupils or students she teaches are 11 to 16. The other day, one of my students called me Unc. Now, I don't even know this word. Honestly, I don't know this word. But she called me Unc. It sounds like uncle to me, right? Okay. And I thought, what does that mean? Her students helped me out. Miss, it means you're old. Okay, so it's a way of telling somebody you're old, even though she's only 34. Okay. Ahmed said she's not okay. So this is the very long sentence. So this teacher is not always sure if the words she hears her pupils use originate in United States. So she doesn't know where they came from, right? Originate means where did it start, right? Where did it originate? Like we might say, where does, where does chocolate originate from? It originates from South America, Central America. Okay, where does it come from? Okay, so why don't we say together, originate. Originate. And if we want to turn this into a 名词, what is the word? Origin. Origin. So we might say, what is the origin of this? Or what is your origin? What's your family origin? Where did your family come from? So why don't we say together, origin. Origin. Okay, so she doesn't know if these words originate in the United States or reach her students through other avenues. What is an avenue? Yeah, but and if it's a word we don't use in Taiwan very much, but in America this is very common on street names. We might have an avenue, like we might say, Pennsylvania Avenue. Like if you go to Washington, D.C., 首都, they have many avenues that are named after states. Michigan Avenue, Pennsylvania Avenue, and it's a big like 大道, right? It's like a boulevard, like Taiwan 大道 is, Taiwan 大道 uses a long word, boulevard. Okay, but avenue is another word that we use. So why don't we say together, boulevard. Boulevard. Avenue. Avenue. But here, like somebody said, an avenue can also mean like a path, a way. Okay, so they're not talking about a road. She's saying she wants to know if the words they use came through the United States or these words come to them through which way, what avenues, how do they receive this information, such as Britain's rich multicultural urban areas. So multicultural means 多元化, right? Many cultures. Urban, of course, means city areas, okay? Where, okay, in these areas, new slang is often spread nationally. This new slang spreads across Britain through what? Through music and the internet, 网路. And British English, this is the British English, is often influenced by various Englishes. Now this is a funny word. Englishes means different kinds of English, okay? American, of course American English, but also Jamaican patois. Now this is a French word, okay? Where is the word, you know where Jamaica is? Yeah, in Caribbean. Now Jamaica is a former British colony, right? And they have a very funny way of speaking too. I shouldn't say funny, but a unique way of speaking. And they have a unique accent. And a lot of music comes from Jamaica. And so and a lot of Jamaicans have immigrated to the UK. So their language influences British English. Also what? African Englishes. So in Africa, they have their own way of speaking, right? Especially in the former British colonies, like Kenya and Tanzania, even South Africa. South Asian languages and various forms of speech. Okay, now a Asian language would be like, where's South Asia? Yeah, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. It's not, 不是东南亚, it's not Southeast Asia, but it's South Asia is like India area, around India, okay? And various forms of speech, various kinds of speech linked to, connected to the British working class. When we say working class, we think of blue collar, okay? We say the working class, not white collar, but blue collar, okay? So when you look at the British blue collar, they have many influences from all of these groups, and that influences their English and the language and the way they speak, which is quite interesting, actually. It's quite fascinating. Okay, there's a very long sentences here, so let's read these together. Here we go. Ahmed said, she's not always sure if the words she hears her pupils use originate in the United States or reach them through other avenues. Such as Britain's rich multicultural urban areas. Let's say that part again. Multicultural urban areas. Where new slang is often spread nationally through music and the internet, and British English is often influenced by various Englishes. American, but also Jamaican patois. African Englishes, South Asian languages, and various forms of speech linked to the British working class. Okay. I didn't really talk about this word because it's not a word we would use. It's a French word. It means patois. I'm not really sure what it means. It's a French word, but I think it's the way the Jamaicans speak. It's a pattern of speech. It's a way of speaking. And they use this word patois, but it's not a word you need to know. So, yeah. Okay, so that's about it. We don't have time to look at the rest of this, but I think it's a really fun article because it reminds us that English, although we learn English together and we look at English, every time we meet, there is actually, English is a very broad language and it's always growing and it's always changing and it's always evolving. As we get new influences, like in America, there's always new words that are coming up because of something that, maybe they get those words from other cultures. Maybe somebody invents a new word. Maybe they take an old word and they change the way it's used. Maybe they combine two words. So it's interesting. We could say English is a very fluid language. It's always changing, yeah, which makes it fun, I think, yeah. I think American English. Yeah, but I think American cultural influence is more stronger than the British culture today. Not 100 years ago, but because American music and movies and pop culture, I think that and that spread, like YouTube and Netflix and all, TikTok, I think that spreads like this article said, that spreads these modern English American words very quickly to everybody. Yeah, soft power, yeah. I know, I have to say, I've heard that the French, 法国人, the French government is also very upset that English words are coming into the French language. So the French will take, in Taiwan, sometimes I know people like to use English words instead of Chinese words. But in France, they're very concerned about this because they don't want people to put English words in their French language. So, we live in a world where information moves very quickly through the internet and through our entertainment, and it changes languages, which is interesting, yeah. Okay, so I want to just wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and we'll see you again in 2026. So, yeah, okay, 新年快乐, see you, bye-bye, yeah.